Chainmail, the solo campaign. Well, I don't know if we can call it a solo campaign anymore because today I'm going to the bullpen, baby. Let's take a look at the ground map. It is July 11th, and over the past few weeks, the Broman Army of the West has encountered two orcish hordes, the first of which they smashed, the second of which smashed them. That bought time for the Army of the North to get to within striking distance of their object of the crusade, which is recovering the girdle of Saint... I don't think he's a saint, but he's a hero, Vince McMaximus, from his tomb in Watchtower Hill. The army of the... Which army is this? The Cleavers is racing to intercept that army. A little too late. As is the Great Khan's army, who on the 11th is currently crossing the Sunderland River. Now, for their part, the Army of the North realizes that they've got a huge block of their bros in chains, being marched in irons all the way up here to Giant Hill, where Murray Mac the Giant resides. And if the orcs can get 100 prisoners to Murray Mac, he's going to come stomping down and fee-fi-fo-fum. He smells the blood of a Broman, and he'll start stomping on their heads. So, to prevent that from happening, Sir Dude de Labides takes 160 light horse up here to intercept the prisoners on march. 125 orcs guarding 525 prisoners are being ambushed by 160 light horse. Or are they? See, one of the things I realize is that although this little skirmish is a bit beneath the level at which I've been running this campaign, it still has some very interesting questions. How many survivors will be there? Will the heroes be able to break the conduct the prison break in enough time to race back down to Watchtower Hill? You will note that the distance between these two is considerably less than an inch, depending on how you measure it. If the prison break can be effected fast enough, these light horse can race down to the south and reinforce whatever's going on in the battle. At a minimum, or at worst, I shouldn't say at worst they get slaughtered. But there is a chance that they're able to participate in the aftermath of the battle. If the orcs are broken and headed back this way, the light horse can ride them down. So there are a couple of very important things we need to discover in this little prison break that will have big ramifications on the campaign as a whole. It turns out, I don't have one friend that will help me with this. I have 7. I threw it out on Twitter and I said, hey guys, let me give you some information. Can you guys run this low-level skirmish for me? And I had 7 guys step up and say, yeah, I'd love to. Almost immediately, I had to call time out and say, guys, whoa, hold on. I got all I can handle. Today, we're going to go through those 7 results. We're going to look at the rules that people used. We're going to look at how they gamed this prison break. And then we are going to let the fates and the dice decide which of those 7 outcomes will be canon for the campaign. And I'm doing this for a very important reason. I want to show you guys how easy it is to feed a little bit of information to your friends and say, you know what? I want to welcome you into my game, and I want you to have an impact on my campaign. And this doesn't just apply to what we conventionally think of as tabletop miniature war games. This also applies to your role-playing games. What we're doing is a version of patron play in miniature. As the guy running this game, the judge or the referee, I've reached a point where I've got a decision, and rather than make a decision, I'm going to let somebody else do my dirty work. That's the facetious way of saying I'm inviting someone else to participate in my fun. I am expanding what we're doing within here, and I think that between the 7 guys running this, any one of them has ideas that I haven't thought of. In fact, as we go through them, you'll hear me say repeatedly, I didn't think about that. Which is why, it comes back to all of us together are smarter than any of us alone. You've got great friends, tap them, enjoy the game with them, and you can achieve great things together. I do want to point out the little brief sketch I gave you here, that's all I gave each of our participants. I had some interesting questions from them, and I refused to answer. I wanted to see how they would interpret this fight and how they would come up with the results. I put very loose restrictions on them. Basically, look, they're in the kind of grasslands. There's some heavy woods up here. There's a giant somewhere over there, off in the distance. 125 orcs, 525 prisoners, a hero with 160 light horse. And you can see the variety of different, tweaks and theme and variation they put on that. All right, so now without further ado, let's take a look at our first contestant. In order of the results that they gave me. We're going to run through these in the order that they submitted their results to me. Okay, this time for real. Let's hit the beach. How nice is this? We've got the sun, we've got the surf, we've got the soothing sounds of traffic, and if you look right here behind this bush, you can just make out there's a police officer with a speed trap. Oh, he got somebody. Darn it, I tried to save a couple of guys, but you can't save them all. Keep an eye on that corner. We'll see how long he sticks around, see how many tickets he's able to hand out for the FOP. But we're not here to talk about local politics. We're here to talk about chainmail, and to that end, we're going to start with entry number 1 by Robert Barron. The Giant Cometh. Now, oddly enough, Robert didn't volunteer. Robert Morgan, our 4th entrant, volunteered, and I sent the information to the wrong Robert. One of his response was, I don't know what this is, but it looks awesome. I'm in. You guys got to get yourself friends like Robert Barron. This is awesome. So he set up this tabletop right here. And it looks very familiar. It looks like the kind of tabletop I might set up. Notice that he's got the giant in the upper left-hand corner. Wait, what? The giant's like a week and a half away. Whoops. Well, he's the judge. He's the referee. If the giant is here, the giant is here. He's got the orc guards down on the lower left, and he's got a little bit of sprinkling of terrain. Look, he's using the same figures, 2mm, same bases, those kind of cheapy 1-inch craft squares. This looks really good. So he's got the orc guards racing up to where the giant is, and he's got a potential for the giant to come out. If we look to the advance to the next slide, you can see that's what happens. He's using the same kind of chips too. What a great deal. The prisoners get all the way up, and it looks like the bros win. After 8 turns, all of the light cavalry and the heroes survived, but the giant being there on site, he managed to kill 100 prisoners. Murray Mack got a little too hungry, got tired of waiting for the orcs, and he ran down to grab a snack on his own. Now, Robert put his own orcish hero. He added little embellishments. This is what happens, right? This is what you do. He's got his own orc hero as a leader, and Uli the Uruk Nihilist challenged the approaching Sir Dude. They were unable to damage each other. He's got some fascinating insights into chainmail. Because 2 heroes can't do 4 wounds, they're unlikely to on a single turn. All they do is kind of counter each other. At the end of the day, the orcs lose 80 orcs plus the hero. 40 survived, and they're hiding out in the woods by the giant. So if this is the result that we wind up with, the giant has entered the arena, and he's way closer than anybody realized. The Bromans are in trouble, and of course the orcs over on the eastern side of the map are going to be a little bit disappointed in that as well. A couple of other things he says. The morale rules make it so you get the same results on the table over and over. Heroes don't do well as far as killy, but they can be used as blocks to charges and such. There you go. Our next contestant is Belloc of Poitiers. And the Battle of Orc-Pate Hill. It's a bald hill he dropped down in the map. We're going to see the map here in just a second. He used chainmail and AD&D, and if we bring up his map, he did the thing that we really enjoy, where people use a paper map to play out a chainmail battle. Perfectly acceptable. You can see the strategy that the orcs have here. They have the prisoners behind Orc-Pate Hill, and in this case, and then they've got their fighters coming to try to hammer the Roman cavalry from behind as they struggle to get over that hill. They've got a little bit of a diversionary force that didn't quite get the job done. In fact, the Bromans were hoping to ambush the orcs, and it didn't quite work. The orcs were ready for them. And he generated an encounter distance and surprise. So the encounter distance was 2 inches, 2 free turns to the orcs as per the AD&D DMG, which is perfectly acceptable. The Dungeon Master Guide is just an appendix, or our officer got somebody. It's just a little addition to chainmail. That necessitated the placement of the hill to allow for the ambush. The orcs wheeled into the Broman flank, which was their big mistake. The Bromans reformed and blew through the orcish line like straw. Although to their credit, the orcs made the morale checks and fought to the last vile pigment. Satisfied, Sir Dude, who was listed as a hero from the Men and Magic supplement, charged the orcish butchers and slew them all. Now, the orcs did wind up panicking and slay as many of the prisoners as they could. So in this case, although the orcs were wiped out to a man-pig, The Bromans suffered 10 wounded light horse, 10 killed, and they only managed to rescue about half, 240 of the prisoners. That's number 2. Number 3, we've got Springtime Nebraskan, otherwise known as the Ganglo-Saxon, and he is using... What are you using there? I gotta be honest, I'm not sure what rule set he's using. I know what he did. He just did basically theater of the mind. He just sat down and figured it out. Perfectly acceptable. I love it. Unless the orcs have some decent spine, he writes, and aware of the enemy, Sir Dude's harassing flank attack may startle the orcs and put them to flight within 10 rounds of combat. Having to fend off fast-moving raiders in relatively open terrain while escorting that many prisoners, the orcs are fighting with their hand tied. After losing anywhere from a fifth to a quarter of their men to Sir Dude's horsemen, the orcs will lose control of their prisoners and decide every orc for himself. Of those that remain, a third will be cut down as they throw away their shields. This is how I see the scenario ending up. He also points out that the orc guards are probably not the cream of the crop. Great point here. One of those little complexities that I didn't consider until much later. Well, until he pointed it out, let's be honest. Warlord Grochnard is not going to appoint his best and brightest to escort some prisoners back for feeding time for Murray Mac. He's going to pick the sad sacks, the loafers, the worst of the bunch. He's going to keep his elite for the upcoming battle that he knows he's about to fight. So they might have had an even worse morale than a normal orcish force would. Moving on to Robert Morgan, who I think was the first guy to volunteer, but the fourth to submit his results. He used Domains at War, a supplement for Adventurer, Conqueror, King, and with variable ratios. So each cavalry unit represented 15 light horse. Each armored foot was 30 orc heavy infantry. And here you can see his setup. So he's using straight ratios. Another easy peasy way that you can scale down mass battles into something a little more manageable. It looks like a skirmish, but all of the hits and wounds and casualties ratio up to the campaign level, the same as we do with Chainmail. Each cavalry unit is 15 light horse, as I said. Each armored foot is 30 orc heavy infantry. I guess that keeps them about equal. Prisoners in the middle. As a result, he's got 525 human prisoners rescued, and he's got 125 orcs killed. Altogether, he's got 40 of the cavalry killed, 5 of the cavalry deserted. I guess they failed the morale. And 3 more are probably going to get executed. Oh boy, 3 of the cavalry from the 3rd platoon returned, humiliated but alive. For now, he wants to know if Gaius or Mandonio are involved, because you know what happens to guys in the shield line that break the line and run, right? Yeah, there's no way out alive. So then we move on to Brian Renninger, Fluid the Druid. Good friend, he's a frequent commenter here on the channel. And let's take a look at his setup. He is using... Oh, he told me in the notes. Let me check my notes here again. I think these are cutouts from Domains of War or something like that. So he's using flats, but it does the same thing as miniatures do. He's got his prisoners being marched up to the woods. The orcs, realizing that they're about to be ambushed or attacked in the flanks by the Roman cavalry, are making for the woods. Those are heavy woods. If they can get in there, it's going to negate a lot of the mobility and firepower advantage that the Bromans have. Even though they're light cavalry, they're not going to do great in those thick, heavy woods. So the orcs we got a couple little small copses. The orcs put some archers, or crossbow orcs, I should say, up to the north, with a bulk of their forces down here in the south. And when the Broman Cavs split up to try to first release the prisoners, bad things happen. The orcs... Oh, here's the other thing he did that I thought was interesting. He split the cavalry into 2 different forces. He's got half of them as lancers and half of them as dragoons. The dragoons dismount, leave their horses behind, and then go off to engage in a little bit of the shooty-shooty with the orcish archers. They're outnumbering the orcs, so that's probably not a bad plan. The problem is that when the lancers hammer the bulk of the orc troops and drive them off, the orcs notice the dragoon horses sitting there relatively undefended. And now they're not undefended. Presumably there are handlers or some light troops, but with the full weight of the orcs barreling down on them, they don't stand a chance. The orcs are able to grab those dragoon horses and ride away. As a result of that, you've got a situation where, going back to the campaign map, you're looking at a total of 27 humans dead, 43 wounded, all of the prisoners rescued. However, the orcs actually did okay. They've got 11 dead, 31 wounded, and 83 escaped. I'm not sure what that means for the campaign. When we translate this back to the campaign map, we'll figure out exactly which of these scenarios is canon. And once we know which one is canon, we'll sit down and do the entire math. Right? But in this case, the orcs, they did okay. They pulled off the light horse from the major battle that's happening a few hours away. It lasted long enough, I think, to keep those light cavalry. They're tired, they're spent, they're not going to be a factor in the aftermath of the battle at the dungeon door, if you will. And a lot of the orcs escaped, so maybe that was a net win for them. Either way, we can move on to number 6, Gygaxian Cultist. He points out the orcs are on their home turf. They know the terrain. They're going to use it to their advantage. That means they're going to choose a place that will allow them to make a stand. And he also points out the orcs really need to get away with 100 prisoners. If they can do that, they can unlock Murray Mac, get him fed, and bring him down into the mix. So what he does is he has 200 of these prisoners hamstrung. The orcs now they're out of the campaign for good. We know that. You're not recovering from an Achilles tear. And, that will slow down pursuit. He has literally hobbled the humans in this case. He stations 1 orc platoon, and as you look at this picture, you can see that he's got all of the green dice down on the lower right are the Broman cavalry. The black D8 is a blocking force. The D8s are all individual units of the orcs. Oh, did I get that right? Let's take a look at the next slide. Now the D6s, the red D6s are the prisoners, and the orange D8s are the orcs. So here you see the Bromans are running for the bridge. They've dispatched a couple of units to the west, a couple of blocks of troops just to kind of intercept and delay those orcs down in the lower left. But they are heading north to try to get across that bridge. And here is the aftermath. If we run the numbers, what you will find is that the orc platoon that was stationed as bait across the stream with 1 unit of prisoners, the top group are racing for it, and Sir Dude was injured, so he's out for 2 weeks, but he did use a withdrawal maneuver to reduce the damage. Oh, I'm sorry, I take it back as I read my notes. Sir Dude was not injured. He used a withdrawal maneuver, something from Adventure Conquer King. I don't have a lot of experience with it. He reduced the damage to 0. So as a result of this, the bros, they took a lot of casualties. Having to force that bridge was deadly. 77 bros are dead. They did manage to rescue 315 healthy prisoners. As I said, the 210 are injured to the point that they're out of the campaign. That's pretty big, man. I think that's almost like 3/5 of the Broman light cavalry are dead, but the prisoners have been rescued, and Murray Mac is not going to be coming down to bother things over here on the western front. Our last entrant is WargameCulture, also known as Purple Druid. He is active on YouTube. As always, links in the description. I'll throw links to all these guys. They're all on Twitter. I'll throw links to their profiles so you can go give them a follow. They're interesting fellas. They've all got something interesting to say. Go give them a listen. WargameCulture used the Modifius Conan 2D12. Now, he's doing a comparison and contrast of different mass combat reviews where he runs a battle using 2 different rule sets to see how they pan out. Very similar to what we are doing here. In his case, the cavalry won bigly. 70 orc casualties, so the rest of them escaped. We've got 40 human casualties and 2 rounds of combat. So this went quick. All of the prisoners are released, and the remaining human cavalry are free to race off and perhaps make it to the battle at the dungeon gates before the day's end. Or maybe they need to stick around and escort these prisoners who have been through, let's face it, a hard marching week. They've probably not been properly fed or watered. So they may be out for another day or 2 taking care of these prisoners. I'm not entirely sure. And there you have it. 7 very different themes and variations on how this prisoner rescue might go. With all of that out of the way, it's time now to decide which of those will be canon, and in fine Wargamer fashion, we're going to let the dice decide. I know what you're thinking. Wait, there's 7 of them. How are you going to set up the dice for that? It's easy. What kind of gamer doesn't have a D7? Look at this fancy little lad, huh? 7, 6, the colors go. I don't know that old Len Zokji would be particularly impressed with this. I don't know how fair it is, but hey, it's good enough for us here, okay? Without further ado, results are number 5. That's going to be Fluid the Druid offers us the Race for the Woods. We can make some notes now. He actually gave me a really solid roster. I should probably lock that in so I'm not blinding you guys. Or giving you motion sickness from the autofocus. So for the humans, we are going to have 27 dead, 43 wounded, and everybody rescued. Now, in addition to that, remember that in his scenario, the orcs only had 11 dead, 31 wounded, but 83 escaped with the horses. Well, wait a minute. I don't know how 83 escaped. We'll probably give it about 40 escaping with it. We'll turn this over because it gets complicated. So here's what we're going to do for the orcs. We're going to say that 40 escaped on horse. Now, they are not going to get a free upgrade to light horse, but we will have them sync up with the Khan's army. In fact, let's call it 50 altogether, because remember how we do our remember how we do our bases, right? So Khan here is going to get plus 50 running to meet him on foot. The rest of them are going to disappear into the woods. They're going to be out of the fight. Our humans are going to have, what did we say here? We had 160 to start with, and they lost a total of 70 dead and wounded. I'm assuming that the prisoners can loot the orc bodies that were left behind. And that means that we're going to have, and one of the reasons we got 50 on horse, is that 80 of these, now again, I'm going to call it 75. Let's make it easy. 75 light horse can immediately ride to reinforce. So when we do this battle down here at Watchtower Hill, we are going to have 3 extra figures of light horse that will be able to arrive. Let's see, how long did it take? That's the other question, I guess, that's important here. Turn 7, so we'll call it half an hour per turn. It's 3.5 hours, about half a day. So they're not going to be able to participate in the battle itself, but we will have an additional 75 light horse there to either screen a retreat or ride down surviving orcs. What a fun little experience. Welcoming people to play around in my sandbox and giving them the power and authority to make great changes to the campaign world. This is an object lesson. Go thou forth and do likewise. You'll find your gaming can only improve by doing so. Until next time, I'm praying for you.